We'll now continue our Jewish journey through the Gospel of Mark. Before we tread new territory, let us review where we've been. Previously, we have seen the amazing authority of Yeshua in teaching in the synagogue. We have seen that by the 24th verse of chapter 1, there are 6 individuals who by this time know Yeshua's messianic identity. It opens up the whole gospel. Mark shows you his cards right there from Mark 1:1. He knows Yeshua's messianic identity. That's the whole point of his writing the gospel. Johnny B, the Father, of course, the Spirit, and Satan, and demons. They know Jesus' messianic identity, and we have seen the great authority of Yeshua. Thus far, Yeshua has authority over the Hebrew Scriptures, chapter 122, and demons, 127. That's not a bad way to start. We continued by seeing this new section, Amazing Authority, Part 2. We saw the home of Peter, which is right across from the synagogue of Capernaum. We talked a little bit about the home of Peter. I showed you the video of me teaching in front of the home of Peter. And we reviewed the story. Simon's mother-in-law, Simon is Peter, of course, lying sick with a fever. Immediately they spoke to Jesus about it. And he came to her and he raised her up, taking her by the hand. The fever left her and she waited on them. When evening came, after the sun had set, the Shabbat had been done, finished, concluded, they began bringing to him all who were ill and those who were demon-possessed. So the whole township shows up because they not only knew what happened in the synagogue, but they also heard about the healing in Peter's home. And they said, if you do it for these guys, you're going to do it for us. So we've seen the miracles of exorcism and healing. And then we see a 1-2 punch here that evening, healing and exorcism. Get the left, get the right, and then it's the old 1-2. Boom, boom. Okay, continuing on. The whole city had gathered at the door. And he healed many who were sick in various diseases and cast out many demons. And he was not permitting the demons to speak. Who's got time for demons to speak? He's got work to do. Because they knew who he was. In the early morning, while it was still dark, Jesus left the house and went away to a secluded place and was praying there. He needed to recharge, recenter, refocus himself. And here come Simon and Andrew's brother and James and John's companions. They searched for him. They hunted for him, right? They found him and said, everyone's hunting for you. Everyone's looking. No kidding, right? People are needy. They are. People have problems. I have problems. You have problems. I'd be doing the same thing. If my particular itch had not yet gotten scratched, or I'm just hearing about it because I'm from a neighboring town, I want to make sure that I get what everybody else got. So everybody's hunting for you. Everyone's looking for you. And they said to them, let us go somewhere else, to the towns nearby, so that I may preach there also. For that is what I came for. And he went into the synagogues throughout all Galilee, preaching and casting out the demons. This is where we left off. It's a purpose statement. This is what I came for. Preaching and supernaturally exercising his authority to teach the way he does. And he demonstrates his authority by backing it up with power. Exorcisms, healings, the miracles, they're validations of the teaching. And I asked you some questions, right? We made some points, asked you to think about the topic. Yeshua's miracles never replace his teaching. They augment, punctuate his message. His big point is not to do all the work, but to teach. He'll do the other stuff when and if he has to, when he thinks it's necessary. Because the authority of Yeshua is most visibly seen and experienced when he succeeds in focusing on that to which he had been called. That's what he said. This is what I came for, to preach, to proclaim. And I said, how about you? Are you focusing on that to which you have been called? We've been called to follow Yeshua. Say, I don't know what I've been called to. Well, sure you do. We've been called to follow Yeshua. So, I pointed out last time that we live in a world of distractions. It gets worse every year with every new technological device which is supposed to assist us in making our lives easier. Winds up raising our cortisol and our stress levels. Ding, 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 ding. Right? That's just my wife's text, by the way. But those are my distractions. What distractions are impeding your following the Messiah? What do you got going on that's keeping you from following the Messiah? That's your calling and all it entails. So, again, let's move on. He said to them, let us go somewhere else to the towns nearby, so that I may preach there also. That is what I came for. He went into the synagogues throughout all Galilee, preaching and casting out the demons. This is a map of the Galilee area. You see the Sea of Galilee. It's a lake. It's the Lake of Galilee. It's actually called today the Kinneret Lake. Kinneret is a harp. It's shaped kind of like a harp. Not a very large lake, but there it is in the center of Galilee. Well, the whole area is not very large, but there you can see, and you can see the road from Capernaum to Nazareth, and there are many towns and cities along the way and in the surrounding area, both north, east, west, and south. This may be a bigger overview. You see the Sea of Galilee up in the top, the region of Galilee, Capernaum, Nazareth. That was what we had zoomed in on. And then, of course, as you go down, as you go south, you wind up going all the way to Jerusalem. Mark is not focusing on Jerusalem. I just wanted to give you a perspective with this map. But now, we're going to talk about the amazing authority of Yeshua. This passage is absolutely extraordinary because we've seen Yeshua at this point heal a fever, heal various different kinds of diseases. But this is a whole other category. Like they say in the film Spinal Tap. This is Spinal Tap. This is cranked up to 11. Right? Understanding that Mark is structured in a way, the first 8 chapters are going to center on the Galilee. And then the conclusion of the book is going to take us from the Galilee, halfway through, we're going to start moving down to Jerusalem, and that's where we're going to focus the end. But Mark has arranged it thematically, and so we're staying in the Galilee for right now. This is the scrapbook that he has created for us. And a leper came to Yeshua, beseeching him and falling on his knees before him and saying, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Every clause in this verse is pregnant with meaning. Let's unpack a few. First of all, what is a leper? Not the animal. We're not talking about a leopard. Consonants matter. We're talking about a leper. Someone who had what we call today Hansen's disease. It's a horrible skin affliction. Communicated To others, by mucus, respiratory fallout, debris, coughing, sneezing. Apparently, 95% of humanity has a natural immunity to this bacteria. But for the 5% that don't, who are exposed to it through close contact, again, hacking, coughing, mucus droplets, whatever, this is literally a life-changing disease. Because it's communicable, and it's also extremely visible. Because the skin is ravaged on the outside, and your airway is ravaged on the inside. So inside, outside, you have these horrible lesions and open running sores, and it's terribly disfiguring, and parts of your body wind up dying off. They become necrotic tissue. And I didn't know much about this until the first time I preached Mark a decade ago. But looking at the images of on Google, to pick one to show you was rather difficult because so many were horrifying, frankly, and truly heartbreaking. But in Leviticus, there's an entire chapter that's devoted to what to do in case of leprosy showing up. We read a passage just last week about skin disease showing up, and this disease showing up in the camp. It's so awful. According to the Jewish law, you had to be removed from society. So feared, so horrible was this disease. You walked around in torn clothing, not because the clothing was old and rotten, but because it was a visible sign. You had to cover a portion of your face for prevention of communication of respiratory disease. Or if you went out, you had to call that unclean. People kept their distance from anyone who called that unclean. Now, think about this. We live in a post-COVID age. We think about how we reacted to COVID when it hit. And everybody's wearing a mask. And everybody's keeping a distance from one another. They made an arbitrary number. Keep 6 feet away from each other, 6 feet distance. Wear a mask. Whatever, not a Lone Ranger mask, but a mask that covers your respiratory area. Right? We know something about, little something, about the kind of stigma to having a disease that is very serious, although not a tenth of as serious as leprosy, when we went through the whole COVID issue. You vaccinated? No. You vaccinated? Yeah. You get your second vaccine? You get your booster? How many boosters have you had? In the Bible times, you had to call out unclean, unclean. You kept your distance from anyone who called out unclean. And today, leprosy is something that is easily treated. If caught with a strong series, 3 antibiotics. Not as terrible as it once was. We actually have about 6,500 cases. Yeah, 6,500 cases, maybe more now, of this in America each year in a national center of Hansen's disease in Baton Rouge. In Israel 2,000 years ago, you didn't have the 3 antibiotics. You didn't have a 1 antibiotic. You didn't have any antibiotics. And so if you get this disease, you're not getting cured. That's progressive and problematic. And so a leper came to Jesus, crying, unclean, unclean, as he approached. And he beseeched him, and he fell on his knees before Jesus. Falling on your knees could not be easy for this leper, because if you have leprosy, not only is your exterior ravaged, your joints as well, your interior is ravaged as well. But yet this leper, on his knees, He says, if you are willing, you can make me clean. See, Scripture is great. Because what's important is not only what it says, but what it does not say. Every word is important. You always have the important task of asking any passage, who, what, where, why, when, how. You've heard me say this before. All these questions. And you'll always invariably open up the text and make it live with your questions. And what he doesn't say, this leper, he doesn't say, if you're willing, you can heal me. He says, if you're willing, you can make me clean. I'm an outcast of society. I don't know of anybody in this room who knows what that's like, or can imagine what it's like to have touch withheld from you. Some of us had to stay home during COVID years. Someone kept their distance, social distancing. But can you imagine what it is to have touch withheld from you? This guy coming to Jesus, he didn't start out as a leper. He wasn't born as a leper. He may have had a normal, loving childhood, but who knows what the backstory of this man is. We can use our imagination. The backstory is not the important point. When Luke, who was a doctor, retells the story in the Gospel of Luke, he says this guy was full with leprosy. That's the way he described it. He says he is chock full of leprosy. He's overflowing with leprosy. Leprosy had control of this man's body, and that doesn't happen overnight. So for many years, this man's not only been deprived of social involvement, but also of simple human touch. I remember reading studies years ago that if a baby's not touched by a certain amount of time, and the baby dies. People will shrivel up and die without touch. And his body was indeed decaying. It was withering away from the disease, but it was withering away on the inside as well. Because without integration into human society, what was his soul like? What was his psyche like? His life is a hell I can only imagine. So, he comes to Jesus and says, if you are willing, I know that you can make me clean. Whether that entails healing is actually beside the point. Watch this. You can make me clean. Does that entail healing? That's beside the point. Help me, he's asking. Help me to reintegrate back into society. Because, there's a whole chapter, not only in Leviticus, but a giant tractate in the Mishnah, the Jewish oral law, about what to do with lepers. The idea is that if a leper is actually ever healed, if there is a remission of this condition, he's got to present himself to the priest. Over the period of a week, we read this stuff about the spots, the skin, last week in Leviticus, for those of you who were here. The period of a week, all his body hair is everything, eyebrows, beard, everything shaved off. The priest examines every inch of him. It's legal, search and seizure, to see if any of that disease is still present. Sacrifice is then made, and blood is placed on the earlobe, and there's a great big ceremony because this leper gets healed. But apparently, in ancient Israel, it had never been done. There is no recorded instance of this ever happening, a leper being healed. It's a sign of the Messiah. So rare is that when the leper is healed, it will be a sign, because no one's ever been able to do it. It would take the Messiah to do it. So, as the man comes to Yeshua, He says, if you're willing, you can make me clean. The question for the reader is whether or not Yeshua, who is identified by Mark in 1:1, as the gospel kicks off, he's identified as Son of God, as Messiah, as Christ. He's demonstrated all along that he's got great power and authority over illness, over demons, the scripture, compassion over people, as the Messiah himself would be, as you would imagine. Would he himself be willing, A, and B, would he be able to do what had never been done before? Could he make this happen for the leper to be healed? Now, according to Josephus, ancient Jewish historian from the 1st century, and for the lepers, in the Antiquities, one of his history books, for the lepers, he suffered them not to come, and this is not Jesus, this is a ruler. He suffered them not to come into the city at all, nor to live with any persons, as if they were in effect dead persons. So not only did you have no expectation of being able to heal leprosy, when you got leprosy, it was effectively a death sentence, that you would die horribly. And on your way to dying horribly, you would die socially. And while the disease was progressive, the social ostracism was immediate. It was as if you were already dead. You were the walking dead. You were the living dead. Dead man walking. Unclean. Unclean. But here's the rest of the story. Moved with compassion, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, I am willing. Be cleansed. Now, let's unpack this very, very important passage here. Some commentaries, some translations say that he was moved with anger. Compassion is a better translation, but let's just say that it should be anger. It can go either way. The spectrum of the word could be either way. But compassion is a better translation. But even if we're angry, and there's a lot of ink spilled by scholars as to why Jesus would be angry. But if Jesus were angry, he would be angry, I imagine, at the horrible ravages of sin that happened to not only a human being, but to a son of Israel. And he's not going to stand for it. So whether he's moved by anger, or as I think, by compassion, he's not going to stand for it. So he is a leper kneeling before him in all his inglorious uncleanness. And Jesus, who we know later in the text, has the authority with just a word to heal someone. That's, the centurions. We'll get to that story in a couple months. He has the authority with a word to heal long distance. He didn't actually have to touch him. But Jesus stretches out his hand, and to this untouchable, Jesus touches him. What would the disciples watching, what would onlookers have been thinking? Place yourself in the 1st century. Nobody touches a leper, let alone this Jesus who we've seen has so many people around him. Talk about communicable diseases. Right? I shake a lot of hands, and every now and then a microbe gets passed on to me, a bug of some sort gets passed to me through the handshaking and the hugging and whatever that I may do. Okay, it's risk of the trade. But imagine Jesus, who has so many people around him. So many people. What's going to happen if Jesus, through contact with this leper, with a death sentence, what's going to happen if Jesus, Yeshua, becomes a leper? But see, look what the text says. As Jesus stretches out his hand and touches him, simultaneously he touches and says, I am willing, be cleansed. This talk is cheap. Yeshua could have said anything he wanted to say. Yeah, be cleansed. Where's the proof in the pudding? How will he back up his words with an equally big deed? What happens? Immediately the leprosy left him. Immediately the leprosy left him. And he was cleansed. Talk about a lot of ink spilled by scholars. There's a lot of discussion over the fact that Jesus touches this leper. Right? Some would like to say that, Yeshua, see, he blew off the Mosaic law. He blew off Torah, which was very clear. Don't touch the leper. And Yeshua, showing that he's bigger than the law, flouted his own authority by breaking the Mosaic law, which wasn't that important and was passing away anyway. That's not what's happening here. It's nonsense. If Yeshua had touched the leper in his leprous state and then healed him, Yeshua would have been breaking the law. But it's not breaking the law if the moment you touch the leper, you are actually touching clean skin. You're not touching unclean skin anymore. Immediately, the leprosy was cleared up. You're touching beautiful, fresh skin. Nothing's going to flake off or break off. It's all fresh and clean. All the leprosy had left. All the leprosy had departed. Not a tiny scrap in his DNA of leprosy was left in this man. Jesus, Yeshua, by virtue of who he was and his authority to heal, he was touching clean flesh. And he said to him, see that you say nothing to anyone. Whoops. He immediately, and he sternly warned him and immediately sent him away. Warned him, what did he warn him of? Take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning? He warned him, he admonished him to do what? Send him away. Send him where? And why? What did he say? Why did he say it? Where did he go? And he said to him, see that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded as a testimony to them. What you offered for your cleansing depended on your financial situation. You could offer on a spectrum, right? From more expensive animals to less expensive birds to there's a spectrum. Wheat, wine, whatever it may be. Jesus isn't saying, all right, now, I'm done with you. Don't take any more of my time. Get away from me. You're the priest's problem now. That's not what Jesus is saying. Some would argue that what's happening here is Jesus is enlisting this man to keep what scholars call the Messianic secret. That Jesus In other words, the way this thinking goes, Jesus is keeping his messiahship secret. He's keeping his identity a secret. If Yeshua is keeping his messiahship, if he's keeping his actual identity a secret, it's the worst kept secret in the world. If someone's teaching with this kind of authority, someone's throwing out demons by telling them, be muzzled, get going, hit the road, Jack, which is Hebrew for Jack, and he's healing a leper, you don't think word is going to get around? Yeshua is smarter than that. This is not a secret. Yeshua is not going to keep, it's impossible. You cannot keep this identity a secret. Don't tell anyone, shh. Jesus is, first of all, what's he doing? He's trying to make sure that his purpose statement is carried out. The verse we just read, I came to proclaim, I came to preach the kingdom of God. The kingdom had come because the king is here. It's me. C'est moi. If Yeshua were to become inundated, which we actually begin to see in that previous passage, then it will keep him from doing what he came to do. It will impede his being able to follow through on what he's called to do. That's why in last week's passage, Yeshua had to get away for a little while, tune everybody out, a quiet time, and because everybody's hunting for him. Everybody wants a piece of Jesus. And if everybody wants a piece of you, you can get no peace. Yeshua said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get out of Capernaum. We're going to travel around because his main purpose was to preach. His main point, please understand this is so important. Yeshua's main point was not to alleviate suffering. Jesus did not come specifically with the main idea, here's what I'm going to come for. I'm going to relieve suffering, I'm going to cast out demons, and I'm going to heal the sick. That's why I'm here. Right? If that was why Jesus came, his three and a half years of ministry would have been completely absorbed with only doing that. Comes time to listening to a message or being healed, people go for the healing. Do you want deep teaching or do you want flashy miracles? People are going to vote for the miracles. Jesus had to be wary of that. Suffering, there's never a shortage of that. Yeshua would spend all his time doing that, teaching nothing and just acting. The actions were there, remember, to back up his teaching, to authenticate his teaching and preaching, specifically that his proclamation of the kingdom was imminent, and for people to get the idea that he's king. Branding is everything, right? To use modern parlance. Do you want people to think of him as the king or as the super miracle worker, the super healer? He needed for people, he desired for people to understand that he was bringing the kingdom, the Messianic age, as the divine Son of God, the promised Son of David, and Daniel's apocalyptic Son of Man, Daniel 7. Don't get distracted. I don't want people hearing about this, and after they're going to want is for me to heal lepers. This is now not going to redefine what Jesus is all about. Jesus did not want to get distracted because you can see how easy it is to get sidetracked. But it's essential for Jesus' ministry. It's essential for his proclamation of who he is as Messiah. Don't turn to the left, don't turn to the right. immediately. Go immediately. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Go to Jerusalem. So this is Galilee. They're in Galilee. It's 3 days' journey to Jerusalem. Get walking. You can walk now. Your joints are good. Get walking. And when you get to Jerusalem, I want you to show yourself to the priest and offer the sacrifice as a testimony to them, to the priests. Not a testimony to you, pal. Look at me. Not to you. But a testimony to the priest to prepare Jerusalem, to prepare the Jewish leadership, to prepare the priests that there's an individual in Galilee who is doing what has never been done in recorded Jewish history before. A son of Israel has healed a man with leprosy. You know, we only have 2 other accounts in the Hebrew Scripture of someone being healed from leprosy. One is Miriam. It was a temporary affliction. She gets it, and God removes it in a week. And the other one is Naaman the Syrian, the Gentile. In fact, Jesus brings this up. He says, were there no Israelites who were afflicted with leprosy at the time of Naaman the Syrian, that he should be a Gentile, should be healed? No Jew, as far as recorded history, has been healed of leprosy. It's something only Messiah can do. And so if this man makes a beeline to Jerusalem and does exactly what Jesus tells him to do, go to the priest, show them, look at me, examine me, let them do the whole week-long examination, go through the whole ceremony as a testimony to the priests, to the religious hierarchy, that the unthinkable has occurred, that the unexpected has occurred. That should get their attention. What happens? But he went out, the man was healed, and began to proclaim it freely and to spread the news around to such an extent that Jesus could no longer publicly enter a city, but stayed out in unpopulated area. The leper did not do what Yeshua had asked him to do. It's all too exciting. I can sympathize. Now, this is an extraordinary way to end chapter 1. Let's pause for a moment and draw out an application to this message. There are many times in our lives when, even if you're the captain of the football team, you may feel separated from society. You may feel alone. You may feel bereft and socially adrift. Many lonely people in the world, and many people who long for human touch. I joke about this during meet and greet, but I really think there's a reason that Paul admonishes the church, Paul and actually Peter, in 3-4 places. He admonishes, and Peter admonishes, greet one another with a holy kiss. But for most of our congregations, that's a step too far. That's too intimate. I can't remember the last time anybody greeted me, and I'm a special speaker when I come to speak in churches. Anybody greeted me with a kiss. I greet my wife with a kiss, but aside from that, I haven't kissed anybody else today. Maybe we should start smaller, lower our expectations. A holy hug is good. It would be terrible. Just think about it. It would be terrible if all through the week, with whatever our jobs are, if we're bereft of human touch. Wouldn't it be great if this congregation was a place where we could be touched you can't touch anybody today. You have to ask permission, unless it's a very formal handshake or a cool up and down handshake, whatever. You better ask permission. May I touch you? You get sued. You get me too'd. The congregation shouldn't be that kind of place. It's the kind of place where we should feel comfortable. And maybe awkward at first, sure. But how about a warm handshake? And we can progress from there to a holy hug or a kiss on the cheek. I mean, the French do it. If the French can do it, certainly we can, right? Right? I remember when last time I led a tour to Greece, the travel agent who I'd known for many years, Alexandra, she greeted me, not with a professional handshake, but she gave me the old European two-cheek, 1-2, kiss. It's nice. Touch is so necessary and withheld by many. This would be a good place to have controlled touch. Now, I'm not telling you next week start kissing visitors, okay? Easy does it, okay? But this can be a place of healing, right? A place of connection. Are you disconnected? Feel disconnected? How in the world can you feel disconnected in a world where you have Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and social media, TikTok, right? How many friends do you got? I have 1,100 friends on Facebook, and not one of them comes to dinner. Not one of them calls me. How could you ever feel disconnected? So, Mark Zuckerberg aside, with Yeshua, we're always connected. We took communion last week. What's the point of communion if not to boldly demonstrate publicly and definitively that we're not only connected at a vertical level, God, but on a horizontal level to one another? If we're believers in Yeshua, if we're his followers, whether we're Jewish or Gentile, American, European, African, we're all connected to one another. We're all mishpucha. No one is connected. No one's disconnected, rather, if they follow Yeshua. Indulge me for just a moment, because I have a public service announcement to make to you, because nobody will ever tell you this information, but I think I need to. Anyway, they were coming to him from everywhere. Okay, so, not long ago, back in 2016, it's the last time I preached through this, a town in California, it was an elementary school, diagnosed one child with leprosy. And I began to look at this, and there was an outbreak of leprosy in California. Still, it's on the increase. News like this is suppressed. It's hard to get leprosy in America, because, you usually think about leprosy from undeveloped third world type countries. But people from undeveloped third world type countries are coming here. And so if leprosy is there, it's here. So in the paper, this is in their local paper, Press Enterprise, back in September of 16, fearing infection, nearly 100 parents of 6, this is pre-COVID mania. This is a preparation for COVID mania, 4 years later, less than 4 years later, 3.5 years later. Fearing infection, nearly 100 parents of 630 kept their kids home from the elementary school on Tuesday, September 6th. One child went to school that day wearing a mask, which I'm sure in 2016 seemed a very extreme reaction. Would they simply have been able to have crystal ball and look forward in time 3.5 years later. See what would happen. But there were several articles that continued after this. After Jerupa Valley scare, it's clear the biblical stigma of leprosy, the biblical stigma of leprosy remains a problem. Yeah, because the disease is a problem. Sure, you can be healed, but it is a problem, and it needs to be addressed. And because doctors aren't looking for it, you might not find it. Panicked parents flooded this district with questions and demanded to know the student's identity. An elderly person called the local newspaper advising the school be torn down because of one diagnosis with leprosy. And again, this is pre-COVID. You see, okay, well, let's tell you what. It's not keeping 100 kids home out of 630. How about we keep all the kids home and let's separate them and make them disconnected, and you have a world where they're not only our kids and our adults are disconnected from each other, forget about what it's doing educationally, but disconnected from one another, and they're afraid of these terrible, terrible diseases. You can see this little chart from California that goes up to 2016 and shows you the leprosy case numbers. That's just in California. But it turns out that not only is leprosy in California, leprosy is endemic in Florida. New report shows, this is 2023, August of 2023, just a little less than 2 years ago. U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention noted in a new emerging infectious diseases report on Tuesday that cases of leprosy, Hansen's disease, are rising in Florida. Why? What's happening? What do we need to know? Whereas leprosy, this is going back to the press enterprise from Jerupa Hills, the local paper, I'm loyal. Whereas leprosy in the United States previously affected persons who had immigrated from leprosy endemic areas, third world countries generally, about 34% of new case patients during 2015 to 2020, again this is pre-COVID, appeared to have locally acquired the disease. They caught it in Florida and in California and in Texas. Medical officials report that more than 200,000 cases of leprosy every year in more than 120 countries. While the reason behind the rising cases in Florida is unclear, there's some support for the theory that international migration to Central Florida of people with leprosy is fueling the locally acquired transmission. And again, this is August 16th. Mounting evidence suggests leprosy is endemic. Biblical times. And now, of course, one of the theories, this is a strong theory because the armadillo, which is a local critter, as you all know, in Texas, we all joke about armadillos, dead or alive. Armadillos carry, about 20% of armadillos carry leprosy, right? It doesn't affect them, but they carry the bacteria. It's just their bodies are the right temperature. I have a little video I want to show you, just so you know what's going on regarding leprosy. Anyway, she's going to go on to say how easily it's treated, et cetera, if it's caught. So, when we look at the Bible and we say this couldn't possibly relate to us, we don't have leprosy anymore, this is like an ancient Bible disease. Well, no, it's not. We have a cure now that they didn't have. But ultimately, the most important fact to remember is that there is a cure, is Dr. Jesus. Not Dr. Google, but Dr. Jesus, who was able to do what had never been done before. And we have current day, modern day reminders, just as we still have storms that need to be calmed, remind us that Jesus calmed the storm. Just as we have hunger today, it reminds us that Jesus filled the hungry. just as we still have sick. They remind us that Jesus healed the sick. We must continue to be dependent on our God. The greatest line of Scripture we've seen today. If you are willing, you can make me clean. And it's follow-up verse. I am willing. Be thou cleansed. The power of Yeshua is timeless and speaks to us 2,000 years later. Next week, we are going to start right here, and we're going to explore the connection between leprosy and Jewish expectation for the Messiah. What does leprosy have to do with traditional Jewish expectation for the Messiah? Stay tuned. Stand by. Come on next week.